All right, we are live, and that was the first track from Trey Gunn's release, Punked/Firma. It was called Glaze. It's a really beautiful track, and we have Trey Gun with us, as well as Gabriel Riccio, the two primary transcribers and tabbers for the new King Crimson 80s albums Transcriptions book. And then we have the three proofreaders, Matt Tate, Dean Pascarella, and myself. So Trey, thank you so much for joining us, and it'd be cool if you could just share a little bit about what we just heard.
You know, I haven't heard it. I really haven't listened to it since I finished the production, and it's a very strange. That's the least strange of the pieces, but it's very strange to listen to that piece of music leading into something, because I kept thinking every phrase, oh, that's the end. Oh, no, he keeps going. Oh, there's that one. Oh, he's doing it again. Those were improvisations done very early in what seems like about 3 years ago, early in the quarantine. The two records, there's the Punked record and the Firma record. That's from the Firma record, which is very fluid and let's say fluid. The other one is very abstract and pointy, and I'll admit challenging to listen to, but a really great listen. If you listen, if you're willing to give it several listens, it's very rewarding. So there we go. Solo guitar, improvs.
Awesome. So we have a pretty sizable group. We have almost 100 people on the live stream right now. So thank you everyone for joining us on the stream. We do want you to know that you are welcome to ask questions. We are technically here to talk about a very complex and special, unique project of sheet music, of King Crimson music. But you're welcome to ask anything else. We're primarily interested in questions you might have about this new book. And let's kick it off with Mr. Riccio. Gabe, can you talk a little about how you started this effort and you know what it took for you to get from zero to something?
Yeah, so this is the third book I've done with Trey now, and I guess the sixth book I've done overall, fifth printed, and it actually, so that the first King Crimson record I ever heard was The Power to Believe, so with Trey, and that was probably back in 8th grade. I heard 30-second clip at level 5, and it was like, I have to hear this record, and I got that, then went back to In the Court, and then filled everything in between. And, in my senior year of college, I had to do these comprehensive exams, and the piece I picked for it was King Crimson's Construction of Light. And so I transcribed the whole thing. I wrote a 50-page analysis of it. I performed it, playing drums and singing. I gave a presentation, etc. And after I graduated, I decided I would make a YouTube video, just kind of impulsively. I was like, why don't I make a YouTube video of this transcription and just post it? So I go to see a movie, I turn on my phone when it's over, and I see I got a new comment from Trey Gun, and I was kind of flabbergasted. I was like, this can't possibly be the real Trey Gun, right? This must be some other YouTuber who's randomly named themselves Trey Gun. But it was the real Trey Gun. Turns out he had posted it elsewhere. And so I decided to send him a message, and we started talking. And first it was, Trey said we should work on some blog posts together talking about the piece. And then it evolved into, why don't we do a book of Trey's solo music? So that was the first thing we did. I had a lot of the double duo stuff transcribed, but for whatever reason, first King Crimson thing we did was the Thrack book. Which started totally from scratch, and then finally we've made this book, and then we're going to tackle John Wetton next. And it's the process, I think, has been getting a lot smoother each time, because this is the first time there's been a real team, right? I mean, the first two books, it was really just me and Trey, and so I mean, having proofreaders is amazing. There's an error in bar 1 of the Thrack book from a stray keystroke, for anyone that wants to go find it. So not having things like that happen is great.
Hey Gabriel, when did you kind of crack the multi-time signatures thing? Did you crack it in my book, or did you just kind of lay the groundwork for cracking it?
Yeah. So
we should talk about what we're talking about.
Yeah. So that's been a big process, So one thing that makes this music especially difficult to notate is that it is often polymetric. So different instruments are playing in different time signatures, and Western notation isn't designed for that, So Western notation software also isn't designed for that, and I use Sibelius 7 to notate these things. So it's definitely a gradual process where, when I initially transcribed some of this music, I just decided, okay, I'm gonna change the beaming to reflect the time signatures, and maybe make a little note above each staff of what time signature it's actually in, But I wasn't really satisfied with that, and then I decided, what if I try, adding in some dashed bar lines to show some of the hypermeter, and I wasn't really satisfied with that either. What I really wanted to see was every instrument fully in the proper time signature. So I think it was around, that first book we did that I figured out.
But we only had, I think on my book, at the most we had 2, right? And on a few pieces, it was like one part and another part, but with Thrack, did we go into 3 or 4? Definitely on the discipline one, we went into 4 different time signatures.
Yep. Yeah, this book has by far the most. Yeah, I mean, so there weren't as many simultaneous time signatures in that book, but for the full transcription of Construction of Blight, I think I had to get into some of the more advanced stuff. So what I figured out I could do was I calculated the entire length of the polymetric cycle. Basically, when do these instruments line up again, right? When does everyone have the same bar start again? So I'd calculate that, and I'd make a bar the length of the cycle. So it'd be like, 83.4 or something like that, a ridiculously long bar, and the software by default is going to put that all on one system. So I'd have to chop that bar up into systems and then add fake bar lines and time signatures after hiding the time signatures. There are 2 downsides to that. One is that some of the instruments have bars chopped in half. Like you'll see in the book, when the polymeters are happening, you'll have half a bar at the end of one system and the other half a bar at the beginning of the next system. And, so I guess the ideal thing to do would be to lay it all out in panorama, right? But I think having a panorama book is not quite practical.
Plus, it's hard to look at. It's hard to see it.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other problem is that it's just a huge pain, and it's extremely time consuming. And, my fake bar lines and time signatures are always popping out at the slightest touch. So I decided I needed to try some more things, and then I started making custom instruments with no bar lines that I could add bar lines to. And I use that when I can, but it's a little bit limited because some of the whenever there's a note that crosses an invisible bar line, because the bar lines are kind of hard coded into the score, right? So even if they're not showing on one instrument, they're still there internally in the software. So if I have, say, a quarter note that crosses one of those invisible bar lines, it's always going to show as an eighth note tied to an eighth note, right? So I could hide both of those and then just throw in a fake image of a quarter note. And then I have another thing that's going to jump off the score at the slightest touch. Or I could just go back to the previous method. So I'm using a mixture of both at this point in order to represent this stuff.
Aren't you guys glad you were just proofreaders?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Actually, I noticed some of these things and I just thought either it was an issue in the PDF that we had, or, and more honestly, I just thought it's just something I don't understand. I just thought it was beyond my knowledge.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Well, hopefully I caught all of them because I definitely went over that stuff about 10 times because they kept popping back out. It was so delicate.
Awesome. So, Gabe, you kind of dropped a little bit of a spoiler, a little bit of a surprise, perhaps, that you're working on some wetting stuff. What does that mean?
So we have 2 more books currently slated at the moment. We're going to do the John Wetton material next. So 73 to 74, all 3 of those records. And then the double duo era after that. So 2000, 2003. And, actually a lot of work has been done on both of those already. So hopefully we can start getting them out on a more regular schedule. We'll see. But
somebody just wrote, Gabe should do Islands because I know he hates that record.
Who said that?
Welcome to Arkham.
Yeah, he also said something like, what was it like? Now that Gabe is an expert in transcribing King Crimson, why is Larks 3 the worst Larks or something like that?
Yeah, that would be your buddy Cameron Pico there, Anthony.
Oh, that's Cameron? That's funny.
Yeah.
Use the word polyrhythm instead of polymeter in front of Gabe. He will kill you. Boy, we're really digging into it, aren't we?
That's right. All right, so we haven't heard anything from Matt or Dean. So, Gabe, you want to introduce who they are and how they got involved?
Yeah, so I actually originally met Matt Tate at the book release show for the for the book of Trey's solo music, the first book we did, which was out in Seattle. And, you know, Matt and I both live in Chicago, so it's kind of funny we met out there. Yeah, I mean, we just clicked instantly, and he started playing or I guess I started playing in his band. He started playing in my band. We gave up having them be different bands at all. You know, I mean, when it came time to look for proofreaders for this book, I couldn't think of anybody better suited to this, really. I mean, he's an amazing Chapman stick player. He's a U8 touch guitar player, guitar, bass, you know, he covers all of it. And not only that, he loves this music and is intimately familiar with it, right? So it made perfect sense to bring him on board. Dean and I met a little later at the Three of a Perfect Pair camp that Adrian, Tony, and Pat do every year. And yeah, also just instantly clicked. Amazing player, fantastic musician. Both of these guys are just incredible players. Check out their music if you get a chance. Yeah, and again, same sort of thing. Just knew the music really intimately, and you know, played multiple instruments in the book, so it just made perfect sense. And I really couldn't think of anybody else that I could have proofread this besides the three of you, you know? So I'm glad you're on board.
Yeah, awesome. So Dean, you want to talk a little about your experience trying to proofread some of this crazy material?
Sure. It was a little daunting because those three albums, there's a lot of music that has affected me, but greatly in a good way. But those three albums came out in my tentative years when I was growing up. So those are the albums that kind of changed my way of thinking musically in high school. So it meant a lot to me to get into these albums. And I think Gabriel and I were talking online recently about how Discipline is a lot of times with a lot of people considered the album, and then there's the other two albums. But I think when people get into the sheet music and read it, they'll see that these three albums are a pretty equal footing for different reasons. And I think that's what it did for me. It made me have, even though Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair have always been favorites of mine, they've become much more part of what I love, being involved in it the way we have.
Because why? Because you like tore the parts, because you just kind of dug in deeper into playing, or
Yeah, I think so. I just got a different perspective on how, when I first heard those albums, I played guitar, and now that I play stick and guitar and a little bass, putting the whole thing together and kind of at least getting my perspective of what the process must have been like putting it together gave me a different way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and Matt, I want to hear from Matt on this too. Seeing what Tony was doing on the upper end of the stick on Beat, I thought I knew what he was doing, and I was like, holy shit, that's, can I say that on here?
Yeah.
Holy shit. I thought that was, you know, Adrian or something. I don't know what I thought. I just some of it I just didn't even hear it until we tore it apart.
Right.
Was that the same for you, Matt? Or did you?
Yeah, that was very much the same. Is a lot of this music you hear sort of as a wash, so it's really hard, or it was for me anyways, to differentiate certain parts. But when you start playing through the notation and really pull the music apart, it's like, especially something like Neil and Jack and Me, but so much of this music, it's like having this Gordian knot and then this one piece of yarn that you're just pulling away, and it eventually unravels. It takes it took a while, but oh man, just how much fun it was discovering kind of how these pieces were constructed. You know, I thought I knew what Tony was playing a lot of the time. Same with Aiden and Bob. Same with Fripp. Man, yeah, I think everybody will be blown away, you know, thinking they know exactly what somebody was playing and find out it was somebody else. Yeah, it's so much fun. It's so much fun working on this, trying to decode it. And yeah, Discipline was a colossally important album for me. And Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair I always loved, but it's like half of it I loved, half of it I liked. And then working through this music and really becoming familiar with it, I just completely fell in love with those albums. There's absolutely, you know, pretty much just as much, they're up there with Discipline for me, having worked through it all. It's incredible.
What's funny for me is I grew up with the VHS copy of the Live in Japan concert that my dad taped off of MTV. Back when MTV played King Crimson, I guess. So
back when there wasn't so much material.
That's right. Yeah. So I grew up watching that, not listening to the albums. But then I also grew up practicing this music alone. And I didn't know anyone. I think Gabe is the youngest on this call. I might be just a couple years older. I'm 38. But
I'm 31.
Okay. So no one in my schools knew anything about this kind of music. So for me, I listened to it and then I would try figuring it out. And I sat alone in a bedroom just playing through a lot of it for many, many hours. So then to see this music start to get notated was like, oh my goodness. I mean, Gabe, you and I worked on my Fracture book together before we talked about me helping with this. And I was like, this is crazy. There's someone else who did this. Like, there's someone else who put this stuff on paper. Because I thought, I never really got into the Elephant Talk website or anything. So I never really looked through what was available. I just thought I was alone, you know, on this island. So then years later to see this effort happen and then to be asked to participate it was a different kind of magic. It was more like there really are people out there that care about this and care about it to such an extent that, like, I think Trey and Gabe and I went back and forth on 2 measures of Three of a Perfect Pair.
I know, I was holding firm and then finally you guys convinced me.
But like the idea that there's anyone else out there that would be willing to debate this is incredible. And that is the level of detail that went into this book that I love. It is a visualization of this thing that we've all held in our heads in one way or another. And now it's formalized into this thing that we all supposedly, you know, agree upon. And we read it and we go, yes, this is a picture, like a snapshot of something that happened in time. And I think that is super cool, especially for people who don't have the patience to sit down and try figuring it out themselves, who aren't interested in notating, like, was this 16th note played on on the 10th fret or was it on the 13th? You know, like, I just think that's, for me, my favorite part of it. And to see that there's so many people around the world that are excited about this, it's super cool.
Yeah. The minutia was everything.
And you said, Anthony, that you were one of the proofreaders, right? I don't know if you said that or not.
Yeah.
It's also worth pointing out that, Gabe spoke to Bill 1 or 2 times. I think I emailed Tony a couple of times, but we never conferred with Robert or Adrian. It's just not where they're at. But that's kind of why it was nice to have this consensus between us. And these guys, you guys were super into the videos. I could only do a little bit of video action, but Matt seemed like he was in there with a microscope looking at the, you know, is it this fret? I was like, I think it's here. I was like, no, it's at the 10th fret. But getting the consensus, you know, and it is, some of it obviously is interpretation because there aren't videos for everything. And we just, you know, we all played through it and tried to figure out what we thought was the best way and how would Adrian do it, and, you know, and how would Robert do it. And I'm pretty sure we're darn close, you know. And even if they did play it one way, they might play it differently now. So it's cool.
Yeah. Well, that's actually something I ran into a lot in the Stickman book, where I would write something down and I'd show it to Marcus or Tony, and they'd say, "I didn't play that," and I'd play them the studio recording, and they'd say, "Oh, the thing, all this music just morphs so much, that they totally forgot how they originally recorded it, even though it was a few years ago." But yeah, I mean, the tabs thing, that was, that's a really big deal, because I couldn't do this on my own, because I don't play any sort of touch guitar. I'm a very amateur guitar player. That's like my fourth instrument. And, I don't have any training in guitar craft or anything like that. So I really need all the rest of you guys to figure out the tablature and where everything was played, because I can't do that part,
And also the extended guitar stuff, which is not my domain either. That's where Dean and well, I don't know if that's your thing, Anthony, or not, but it definitely was Dean and Matt's thing, the extended stuff.
Yeah.
The harmonics and I mean, what the hell is Adrian doing? Is it a synth? Is it an octave? Is he doing a false harmonic? Is he, and that's where these guys really picked up the slack for Gabriel and I.
That was a lot of the hardest stuff.
It was.
Yeah, it kind of was, wasn't it?
Oh man.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely the hardest stuff. And I mean, there are a couple things in the book where it's still just a guess, and that drives me crazy, because I like to be really, really exact about this stuff. But there were a few things.
You guys found like Adrian's pedal board notes, like he was reposting them recently or something, right? That
Yeah.
Figure out a little bit if it was an octave or
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think Dean found it.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was strange, because like you'd hear a harmonic and you would think, well, is it plucked or is it tapped? And then you'd find the video and be sure that it was tapped, and then you'd look at the video and he's plucking it, and there was a lot of educated guess, but I think we got very close.
I think
Adrian plays harmonics several different ways too. So which one of those ways was he doing it? And then which actually would help, that would also determine what frets or strings we might choose. Because if he's holding the pick with these two fingers and doing the harp harmonics, picking behind the note like that he's fretting an octave up on the string, that could change any number of things that happen down here, because those harmonics, maybe the natural harmonics can be created anywhere else, or at least a number of other places on the guitar, by that false harp harmonics that Adrian uses so well. Man, that was so hard and so fun.
I'm amazed that it actually got finished, this book. And I say that from just project experience with work. This is the kind of thing where we didn't have a deadline, and it's very easy to get tunnel vision, like, no, it was this kind of harmonic. No, he used the Paganini pivot here. No, it was, he tuned this string here. He was playing in 17, not in 13, like, it's easy to get caught up in those details, but we did finish it, and I think that's pretty astounding. And I also think it's kind of funny how we're probably desensitized to so much. Like, for us, we're looking at this music and it's like, okay, yeah, Adrian plays car horns here, and then but like any other person coming to this book is going to be like, what, there's car horns in this song, like, and they're played on the guitar. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see the reaction to some of this. Thrack, I feel, was, at least in the Thrack notation book, it was much more straightforward. Yes, they used synths and, MIDI pickups and that kind of thing, but I feel like these three 80s albums were kind of like, hey, there's this shiny new thing and it can make any sound, and I'm going to make my guitar sound like seagulls, and then I'm going to make it sound like an elephant, and then I'm going to make it sound like, car horn or whatever it is. So I feel like there's a lot more to get into, and we still finished it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's actually a lot easier for me to finish this sort of thing than it is for me to finish my own music. I haven't put out a record since 2013, and I've got 8 of them in progress, and I just get so creatively bogged down. So moving to something like this is actually kind of a relief, because it's
technical, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I mean, you know, as you guys were saying earlier, it really gives you a deeper appreciation for this music, digging into it like this. Because in order to notate this stuff, you have to analyze it, you know, and a lot of that analysis is reflected in the score. A lot of it isn't stuff I put in there, you know, because it just would have been sort of superfluous, like talking about like the blog post I did a few years ago about all the recurring themes on discipline, that sort of stuff. But it is really fun, you know. It gives you a whole new appreciation for this stuff, and certainly, you know, I view Beat and Three of a Perfect Pair really differently than I did in a lot of ways, and I think in a way this book could be sort of an argument for a reevaluation of those records, you know, because I think a lot of King Crimson fans tend to kind of write them off as just lesser disciplines, and you know, having dug into them now, they're not that at all. You know, the band's approach changes so much from record to record. You know, I think
I got a question for you.
Yeah,
We didn't really argue at all about accidentals on this book. Is that because the music's different, or because I was just less anal about it than the Thrack book, or it's just obviously more modal and clearer? Or what's your take on that?
yeah,
The background is we were arguing is a little strong, but we were heatedly discussing the accidentals and how to do them on the Thrack book a lot.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, the accidentals problem is when you get into the modes of limited transposition, right? Where Western notation is designed to work with 7-note scales, and when the band is using 6 or 8-note scales, spelling gets a little hairy. But the use of those scales was much more prominent in the Wetton era, and then later in the double duo.
Yeah, okay.
And there are only a couple moments in this book. Like a lot of the music in this book is a lot more diatonic. And yeah, there are only a few things here and there where that really becomes an issue at all. I could rely a lot more on key signatures for this one. So yeah, we'll get back into it on the Wetton book. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We have some questions that that I think can help guide our discussion a little bit too. Let's see if we can go through these quickly, and then we will let's cut some music in, and then we'll come back and we'll have some. I have a couple of ideas for topics, but several people have asked, and Trey, this might be political, and I don't want to. If you don't want to answer it, that's cool.
I know what you're going to ask.
Okay, are you allowed to answer it?
Go ahead.
Are you allowed to answer it?
Well, let's see what I say.
Okay. Well, a lot of people are asking about the transcription process and whether you were using original mixes or perhaps you had things that were not original mixes.
We used everything we could get our hands on. I mean, first of all, Gabriel is so awesome. He can just hear the shit. We did get our hands on a few isolated tracks. I think that first started with the Thrack book because of the drumming. Isn't that right? It was never.
But we only got access to them in the last 2 or 3 weeks, so it was a total scramble.
Yeah. So sometimes we were able to get some of the isolated tracks, but I don't think that's how most of it was done for Gabriel. First of all, Gabriel does most of the he does all the transcribing, actually. So that's the answer. Can we move on now?
All right. Well, that's the answer you gave. And then another question. Is there going to be a reprint of the Thrack book? I have been asked this question several times, not just in the stream, but on comments and private messages. I didn't even know it was out of print.
Well, it's hard for me. There's a lot of complicated answers to that question. Actually, I stopped the sales. I don't know if it's actually totally completely sold out or if I have 10 or 12 copies left. Because of the pre-orders for Discipline and people who ordered multiple books, I thought I better stop so that I don't end up having to write somebody and say, oh shit, I'm sorry. So there may be a few more copies appearing in the next few months. Reprint, I seriously doubt it. I seriously doubt it. And I doubt there will be a reprint of this book, but I'm pretty sure we're going to sell out.
Yeah, so I think what people don't understand is basic economics of this kind of thing. And that's not an insult on anyone's intelligence. It's just you may feel like this thing has a lot of demand, but the reality is the cost of printing, the cost of shipping, and keeping all of these books like in Trey's garage or something where he can't park his car. You know, like there are actual physical costs.
You're the one who knows this.
Yeah, and you didn't tell me that. I mean,
when the track books arrived, I was shocked.
Yeah.
I thought they would come in boxes to my PO box, and a guy delivered a 1,200-pound pallet, and this is 2.5 times thicker. I mean, this isn't that interesting, but the biggest costs are the printing and the publishing money to pay the records. It's enormous. So. The obvious question is there digital copies at present? No, there's no digital copies. We only have a license for hard copies, and that's our intention, is to make a really beautiful book. And we'll see about the future. Gabriel and I have talked about buying a digital license, but it's complicated. Once there's a PDF out there, that's it. It's out there.
Okay, a couple of people have asked, what was the most difficult track to transcribe? And before we go there, let's listen to one of your pointy, difficult pieces of music from Punk'd.
Dear. Okay, make it a short one.
Yeah, Shotgun Wedding.
Okay, sure.
Or Donkey Time.
I don't know. Whichever's shorter.
Donkey Time is shorter, so
we're
going to check out Donkey Time from the Punk'd album, Punkt, recently released by Trey. All right, that was a pleasant little interlude.
You're pushing the envelope there, dude.
All right, so Gabe, we'll start with you. What was the most difficult song for you to deal with on this album? And people say, to transcribe or whatever, but the work of the transcriptionist is not necessarily listening and finding notes.
All right, yeah. Mind if I give kind of a long answer to this?
Sure.
Yeah, so I think that's probably tied between 3 songs for me. One of them is Neil and Jack and Me. And that song took me a week, and so did Neurotica. That's probably the second. And, both of those songs, I think, really surprised me in a lot of ways because, as I said, there's kind of this perception maybe that Beat is just kind of more of Discipline with a few pop songs thrown in or something. But Neil and Jack and Me is actually a more complicated piece than anything on Discipline. Even the title track, I'm going to say, because here's the difference, right? The title track of Discipline, you've got, each player in their own time signature. Bill's playing 2 time signatures at once. But, for the most part, everyone is kind of in one time signature, unless Fripp switches time signatures to start phasing, or Bruford starts playing with the subdivisions, and then it's impossible to tell what time signature he's in at all. But with Neil and Jack and Me, first off, Tony is playing a third interlocking guitar part on the top side. So that's an immediate difference from anything on Discipline, that you now have essentially 3 guitars in 3 different time signatures. Then on top of that, each guitar part is in mixed meter. So everyone's in their own time signatures, but in the finale of that piece, basically the guitars are changing time signatures every bar, while Tony is doing a 5/8 thing on the top side of the stick, and he's playing in 4/4 on the bottom side of the stick, and along with Bruford, who's also playing in 4/4. And then somehow Adrian's singing over all of that. And then somehow Fripp plays a solo on top of all of that. So it's incredibly dense. And, it really kind of surprised me once I started digging into it, just how incredibly intricate that song is. So it really feels like an evolution of what they were doing on Discipline. Whereas you go to 3 of a Perfect Pair, it's almost the opposite thing, where they're done with the interlocking guitars, and you have some on the title track, but they're not polymetric at all. There's like 3 bars that happen twice that are very, very simple polymeter, and that's it, right? It's a lot more focused on crazy string skipping than that kind of rhythmic thing. So they kind of take that as far as they can on Neil and Jack and Me, and then mostly leave it behind on 3 of a Perfect Pair. So then, of course, Neurotica, because, car horns and stuff. And then
Bill's
Dig
parts
Me.
too, right? What about Bill's parts on Neurotica? Was that a
Oh,
challenge?
God. Yeah, that was really hard. So creating a drum legend for this book was interesting. And the drum legend I included encompasses all of Discipline, where he's pretty much just using 2 toms, rototoms, and some occasional Simmons toms, and then standard drum kit beyond that. Then on Beat, he starts using a whole bunch more Simmons kicks, Simmons snares, Simmons hi-hats. Beat is a much more produced record. There's a whole lot more overdubs. There's a lot of times where Bruford is overdubbing stuff in a way where the live part is completely different from the studio part because of that. So yeah, Neurotica's drum part was completely insane, and that took a whole lot of time too. There was a lot going on there. And then 3 of the Perfect Pair, he starts using the most electronics, and I mean, a lot changes on that record. There's a lot more pedal effects. Tony's mostly playing bass. He barely plays stick on that record, but yeah, the most difficult song to transcribe on that record was probably Dig Me. I procrastinated on that song for a long time. It really scared me. Because listen to some of the stuff those guys are playing on that song, it's not transcribable, right? So I did my best.
Yeah, and I think what people need to realize about buying this book, reading it will take practice. This is not like, oh, it's there, now I get it. Like, I'm just going to put on the record and just scroll right through, I'll follow along. As someone who worked on this in a small way compared to you guys, like, just following along, like, wait, did we turn the page? Like, it is hard to read this book. And not because you didn't make it clear. It's just like you're trying to... It's very difficult to get your reading brain and your musical brain to attach to whatever is happening at the moment. Especially when you're like, okay, there was the snare. but you don't know, was it the snare in the previous bar of 4 while someone's playing 5? You know, like, it's really hard to track.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys feel that way. Now,
It's not sight readable.
Yeah. Trey, you have a unique position, having been a member of King Crimson. Do you feel that your membership in the band sort of biased you or made certain things harder than they probably would have been if you came to it, like one of us?
Harder? No, I don't think so. I mean, maybe if Gabriel and I hadn't worked together and he wasn't so anal about it, and I felt like I was trying to hold the lantern of doing it to a high standard, but I didn't. I felt like he was holding that, so that would be the only thing for me. Like I wouldn't want to do it slightly half-assed. Otherwise, don't do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you either going to do it or you're not going to do it. I mean, we could have left all the tabs out and it still would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed like we kind of set a standard for the tabs on the Thrack, and on my book, the tabs are really complicated because we did the stick tuning, how I tune it, all in fifths, and regular tuning in fourths. So we had doubled, that. So no, I guess, yeah. And I don't even know how much my insight of having played some of this music even helped us. I felt like Gabriel got it all regardless, it probably just having worked with Robert for so long and know how he voices things, but except he was in the standard tuning back then, for this book. For the Thrack era, I felt like I had a real advantage having worked with him for so long, and we were in the same tuning, and I learned some of the general gestures on guitar even at the time, but this stuff is, yeah.
It kind of raises the question, like, what is your motivation for doing this? Because you're the one saying King Crimson doesn't like to repeat itself, and putting it into sheet music is difficult, and like you're kind of the.
I have to say a little bit of it is because we can. Like, we couldn't have done this 10 years ago. I mean, the reason why, one reason that this hasn't happened before is that it just wasn't feasible. The software wouldn't let you do it. You'd have to do it by hand. And, I'm sitting here archiving my stuff back to when I was in college, and I did all the frickin' notation with a calligraphy pen. And if you wanted to, if you wanted the oboe player to have their part, you had to copy the whole frickin' score out again for the oboe. Now you don't have to do that. But I think if Gabriel hadn't cracked how to hack Sibelius to do the multiple time signatures, there'd be no possibility of doing it. Once he cracked that, it was like, well, how can we not go for this? Wouldn't you agree? Like,
on the other hand, if I had to do this by hand, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Nah.
Terrible handwriting and.
Yeah. Because you need to lay it out to see what you have, and then you need to, like, you've got to get all the balls in the air juggling at the same time to see what you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. I don't know if people would realize reading the book that there were, like, technological limitations to not doing it before. You think, oh, it's just sheet music, just someone needed to sit down and do it. But no, even the software 30 or 40 years later was not ready.
Yeah. No, Gabriel definitely had to hack it. I mean, he had to come up with wouldn't surprise me. I mean, okay, we're kind of blowing it up a bit. It wouldn't surprise me that Sibelius would start to offer this as a possibility just from having seen what we do with it. But the software is not designed to do this. Is that correct, Gabriel?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, the version of Sibelius that I use, that whole team was fired and they went to Steinberg, and they're working on software called Dorico now that does support this kind of thing. And so, I probably should switch over, but Dorico's got quite a learning curve and a whole bunch of issues too. So I've kind of been dragging my feet on that. And plus the rest of it is in this format. You can't easily port it over, so So yeah, the possibility is starting to exist natively, but I'm not doing it that way.
Hey, I saw a great question go by that you guys can answer. What's the easiest piece for a guitarist to start on, and what's the easiest piece for a drummer to start on? What do you guys think?
Drummers, Neil and Jack to me is pretty easy. Heartbeat's pretty easy for drums.
I'm gonna have to look through the song list.
What about Heartbeat on guitar? Or yeah.
Yeah, Mate Kudasai is pretty straightforward.
Sheltering Sky wasn't bad.
You're not the soloist.
Wow.
Yeah, and you kind of need those synths.
Nah.
The
No
rhythm,
way.
the rhythm guitar on Heartbeat is pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Neil and Giacomi is a piece of cake, so I would start there. Definitely start with Neil and Giacomi.
It's only hard to transcribe. It's not hard to play.
No, it's
Piece of cake.
Yeah, it's really funny, because sometimes I try to play through this book on guitar, and I'm like, oh, I can play this lick, and then I'll get to the next lick. This one doesn't look too bad, and then it's like, no, not a chance.
Gabriel, what's interesting about Neil, Jack, and me is, for me, it was probably as well the hardest thing to work on. But I was surprised because it doesn't sound difficult. It just got this nice forward propulsion where you don't think, oh, this person's in a time signature different than the other person. And then when you go and work it out, you're like, oh my God, it's so much different than I thought,
Yeah, I think because it's got this kind of driving 4/4 rhythm underlying the whole piece, it kind of deceives you that way.
Yeah.
It's deceiving. The hardest part of this whole process for me, I think, was figuring out almost all of Adrian, Robert, and Tony's parts, making notes for almost all of Beat, and then thinking that I sent them to Gabe and not. And lost those notes and had to do it all over again. That was my favorite part. That was the best part.
Did you do it the same way the second time, or did it change?
It, as far as my my long-suffering memory goes, I believe it was mostly the same. I think it did reinforce certain beliefs that I had and certain fingerings that I don't want to say fought over, like you and Gabe were talking about, but certain tabs where I most emphatically pressed that they be the ones we go with, and it was helpful. It was good. I was actually glad to do it again when it was over.
And the fingerings are critical. One of the things that kind of stunned me about playing through this stuff, and we all played through all of it, how fast it was. Like, I could do it. I could play the stuff, but then I'd play along with the record. I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this is unbelievably fast.
Frame by frame. Frame by frame is like brutally fast. And to play Robert's part,
Well, yeah, sure.
Robert and Fela Hunjinji.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Like, there are certain things, like, even though Robert, when you look at the sheet music, you'll see Robert does one thing 100 times in one song, and it's like, okay, I can do this 3 times, and then you can do it 10 times, and then you get to the 15th time, you're like, how many more measures of this is that? And then you're like, when you're at time 20 or 25, your arms are burning. I mean, it's like you've been weightlifting.
And you have all of the measures to go.
Right. Yeah. It's like, oh, just another 3 minutes of this. And you've only been playing 30 seconds. Like, holy crap.
Yeah, and you're still struggling to stay on the skateboard.
That's right.
Yeah, and I could be off base on this, but my impression as sort of a more beginner guitarist was that some of these licks I would look at and I'd say, okay, this seems like a pretty straightforward way to play it, and then I'd set up a tab like that. And then it would turn out he was playing it a way that was like 10 times harder to play, So a lot of these parts, it's like he's not playing them in the easiest possible configuration. He's adding some complication to it that you wouldn't even notice if you just heard the record. Adding extra string skips and stuff. Just
And some of that has to do with, I think, the part preceding it and the part that directly comes after. Like how you go into a part will help determine your fingerings, and just same with coming out of a part, going into another one. That plays an enormous role in what fingers you choose.
Oh, and listening
what
to
tabs.
what the other person, like Robert will play this 20 times and Adrian will play that 16 times, and they end at the same time. It's easy to play, you know, like you can do that, sure. But can you land on the one? That's totally different than being able to play it. It's like playing it and then playing in time and being in sync with the rest of the band. And you're just like, I can set up a loop, you know, and repeat the same thing. But sometimes when I'm playing along through the whole song, I'm like, holy cow, how do you really have to be listening to what the rest of the band is doing while you're paying attention to what you're playing. It's a total division of the mind exercise, which I'm sure Trey could elucidate.
Well, I think you just pointed out you can do it. You can put your nose down and tune out the world and play the part perfectly. But the ideal is you're playing it and you're listening to both the parts at the same time, and you can't tell where you are and where the other person is. You know, you hear it as an audience, and yeah, that's tough. I mean, that's a whole other level of just being able to deliver how you listen to it. But, you know, also the fingerings too is which string you're using. So like the discipline riff that it goes over those strings, it makes the high note pop out differently than the low notes. And Adrian are, you know, they're doing this thing that's part
timbre.
of that's part of the part. Yeah.
Timbre. It's huge.
Yeah. And also, you know what I found funny, and maybe Matt and Dean have the same thing, was like these really hard guitar parts, they are way easier on a tapped instrument.
Yes. Completely.
Than
way easier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Unless you're a bluegrass, have experience with a bluegrass ninja or something, or maybe a death metal ninja, then you're good to go. But for the rest of us who aren't flat picking champions, it really it really forces. It really helps you appreciate what they were doing. The level of, anybody can work their way up to playing that music to a metronome. But yeah, listening to playing Fripp's part and listening to what Adrian is, your focus, to keep in time with the music, your focus has to change to different instruments. Because what will keep you on, maybe you need to listen to Bruford's part for this section. And then if you do, for the next section, you're doomed. You have to listen to Adrian, or you have to listen to Fripp, or that interchanges a lot.
And keep in mind, they didn't have in-ear monitors back in the 80s.
No.
Oof. Right.
No.
Do you know how bad the sound on stage used to be? I mean, what could you have heard? Yeah.
There was no quantizing. This was all recorded to tape.
Yeah, and
Amazing.
then
No editing.
you
really.
mentioned that it's easier to tap stuff. There are times where I was like, did Robert play this just because he hated himself? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I thought, just use your finger. Just
in your future.
You know, and just like hybrid pick it. Do you have to do this with a pick? Do you have to do this with alternate picking? And then you watch the videos of like Elephant Talk, and it's clear he's doing a double downstroke. He'll go down, down, you know, and that's not something that you normally see him do. So it's like, okay, there were these exceptions. Like, is he more dogmatic about it now than he used to be? Or was that just a compromise or what? But half the time I'm thinking, geez, Robert, just use your fingers. Like, stop or tap it or something. It would be so much easier.
Hybrid picking wasn't even a big thing.
Right.
That seems to be, much more so in the last 10 years, where it's really taken off.
Steve Howe was like the only hybrid picker,
Yeah.
mainstream, popular guitarist doing anything super interesting with it.
And that generally changes the timbre of the
Right.
note too.
Yep. Yeah.
There was no model for this kind of music at all. That's what's probably hard for people to grasp who wasn't there at the time, because now there is a model, but they were just, what could you refer to how to do this?
Gamelan and Steve Reich.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the Fridays appearance in 1981 when I was in 10th grade, and I couldn't believe what I was watching. I'd never seen or heard anything like it before.
And now you own one of those pieces of musical equipment history.
Yes.
Tony's pedalboard.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, Dean actually proofread the whole book through Tony's pedalboard that he used in that performance, which is amazing. I love that.
Oh, that's super
Great.
cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you have one of the Rolands too, Dean?
I
One of
have
the JC120s?
I have his JC 120s from the Discipline tour. Yeah.
God, I love your guts.
these are loud.
So we haven't talked at all about the URL at the bottom of the screen, musicscores.bandcamp.com. We are here to discuss this product, but we're also here to shill it. So, Trey, you want to do some shilling?
I think if you listen to us for an hour and you're not interested in it, then you should probably just move on with your life. Musicscores.bandcamp.com. Yeah, we have the book order there. Discipline. There was Thrack. There may be a few more Thracks appearing. My Scores book. We have some Stickmen book. Marcus has a Marcus Reuter has a string quartets up there. How was that for shilling? Did I say enough?
Well,
Go buy the book.
Yeah, the book is $50 plus shipping and handling. And can you talk about the printing quality and maybe why this isn't a print-on-demand type product?
Well, print on demand. It spooks me a little bit to send out the PDF to someone else. I'm a little bit nervous about, acquiring the license was a big deal. In fact, when we
hang on, sorry, Trey. I mean, like print when you order. Like Amazon has printers that will just print when you click the button.
I mean, the big thing, and I think this was probably Gabriel's idea, is that we do the spiral binding.
Oh, that was you.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. I originally, when we did my score book, I found a company in Colorado that just did music scores. So they would do, like, if you want a crazy orchestral score, custom pages, and they did the spiral. And we did it a little bit bigger. We did, it's not 8.5 by 11, it's 9 by 12, which actually is significantly substantial more music on the page. So it's the highest quality we can get. And the spiral bind is awesome because your book just lays flat and the pages are the binding's never messed up. I don't know how you could do it any better, really. Color cover.
That's right. Shiny color. Shiny color.
All of the words are spelled correctly.
Now. Mate Kudasai wasn't.
Yes. Well, it is now.
Right.
Excellent.
Yeah, so just I want to say it's getting to the end of a process like this, having heard probably 25 different recordings of every song in this book, and just so much time spent dissecting details and stuff. I would expect to hate this music by now, and instead, for whatever reason, I feel just as fondly about it as I did when I started. It's just such a privilege to work on this stuff. It's so rare to encounter music, with such intense artistic focus, that's doing something so unique, at such a high level, and still manages to load a lot of emotion in there too. And so it, in a way, it's like once we get to the end of this King Crimson project, I don't even know if there's a future for me in transcribing after that, because I just can't imagine transcribing anything else ever being as satisfying as this.
That's great, man. One quick additional shill here. It is Bandcamp Friday. So if people buy it today, right now,
yes,
100% of the revenue goes to the artist, being, Trey. He doesn't have to give a cut back to Bandcamp. So if you're watching this live,
which is an enormous cut. So
yeah.
Really today.
Yeah. So if you're watching this right now and you haven't already ordered it and you're thinking about ordering it and you're like, I'll do it this weekend. Like, no, if you do it today, like right now, Trey will get the full proceeds of the book because Bandcamp is offering 100% of revenue to go to artists on the first Friday of each month because of what COVID has done to the music industry. So yes, please go order it. If you're going to order it and you haven't already, order it today.
Yeah, and
How many people?
Or by
this is
anything.
the last
from
one of
this
those
point
Fridays. Sorry, this is the last one of those Fridays that's been announced. So this could actually be the last opportunity for that. So yeah, definitely grab it today.
Anthony, how many people are on the call?
135.
That could this project could sell out today. Just
on.
go to Bandcamp, buy it. Don't be left out. You're gonna hate yourself. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Buy it. Could sell out today. You don't know. Go buy it.
Jump in.
Unless you're outside of the States, then that's going to be a painful shipping cost, but
Yeah.
we don't have to go there.
That situation will rectify itself once this whole COVID thing has died down a bit.
Chad Osman is asking, would anyone on this video or in this chat with music on Bandcamp please share a link? Yeah, so I'm assuming, Chad, you're asking other people in the chat to share their music, but in case it's not clear, the URL at the bottom of the screen, musicscores.bandcamp.com, is the one to go to for this book. But yeah, everyone's welcome to share their Bandcamp links in the chat.
You could type it in the chat, right?
Oh yeah, I'll do that right now. And if you have any other questions before we go, I'd like to wrap it up. I try to keep these at about an hour. So Trey or Gabe or Matt or Dean, anything you want to discuss before we wrap?
I just wanted to thank everybody for getting this together and doing it. It's been an honor to work on this book, and I just appreciate being included. Thanks to everybody.
Exactly.
Thanks to all you guys for being involved in this. You know, I mean, couldn't have done it without you. And I think
Yeah, it would have been a little sloppy without you guys.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
hate to say it.
Yeah.
It's been a privilege and an honor for
Yes.
sure. And God, Dean and I have been friends since before we met, and that was, when did we meet? Was it 2014?
Yes.
That was the same year I met Gabe. So after a week-long, 9 days spent hanging out with Marcus and Trey at Marcus Reuter and Trey Gun at the Seattle Touch Guitar Seminar. Same year, 2014. That's where I met Gabe at. It was the Triple Door with Trey, Alonzo Ariola, and Michael Manring.
Yeah, Three
A
Below.
trio concert. Yeah, Three Below. That was amazing. And then afterwards, we go to pick up the book, buying Trey Gunn's book, and then I meet Gabriel and Sophia. And yeah, and then Gabe and I have been in a band together for a few years, and yeah, it's like Trey was one of my musical heroes, you know. So being involved with this is fantastic, you know. Yeah, I bought Trey. Sorry, a little anecdote, but I bought Trey Gunn's The Third Star. I was in London in 1997, November. Went to an HMV in Soho, found this, bought it, and listened to it incessantly. I was just completely mind-boggled by it, because also the internet was very nascent at the time. So I thought that, you know, being interested in picking up the stick, that, well, it's all played live because you're supposed to play all the parts at once, right? So that was the dragon that I've been chasing for quite a few years, until I found out otherwise. No, there's overdubs, of course. Oh, idiot. And then the other Crimson related anecdote was I'm 46 now, so being a child of the 80s and in a Headbangers Ball, King Diamond was one of my favorite musicians and bands. So I'd always go to, you know, my Music Land or Record Town or whatever it was, and searching for King Diamond records, them, Abigail, and then I could never find it. There was always this face, this King Crimson face. Like, who is this band King Crimson? I just kept always seeing the first album, in the Court of the Crimson King. All I wanted to see was King Diamond's face, and I was always met with this this schizoid face. And then fast forward to 1995, seeing Crimson on Conan O'Brien, and life-changing, completely life-changing. That's when I knew I was going to play the stick. So
that's cool.
Life-changing. So,
hey, Trey,
this is a huge honor.
I agree. Thank you, everyone. Trey, just one final thing. Thank you to everyone who did order during the stream. I see a bunch of people in the comments saying just ordered it. That's awesome. Bandcamp Friday. But Trey, can you set any expectations on when you will start getting copies, or do they come to you first and then you ship them out? Like, how's this work?
A friend of mine is handling the shipping for this, and the copies at the moment are supposed to ship to him on December 23rd. The boxes are going to be all ready to go, so some of them could turn around on the 24th or that week. So we were hoping to get it out by Christmas, and so sometime that week they'll start shipping, and we're shipping with good tracking, and so people should see them, I would think, in a week after that.
All right, so January is a reasonable late expectation.
The first of January, I would think, unless something goes wrong in the printing process.
Right.
I hope not. But
all right, cool. Trey, it's awesome to get your time, and thanks for sharing your King Crimson experience and your heart with us. Gabe, thank you so much for your incredible talent and the innumerable hours that you spent working on this music. Dean and Matt, you guys are really amazing. I mean, it was an honor to be able to participate in this with you, and I feel like I played such a small part. You guys did so much. I mean, you have sticks. You know how all that works. You play bass. You also play guitar. You know, it's been awesome to work on this, and I'm super looking forward to working on this wetting stuff, because I've got a lot of it up here, and I'm looking forward to getting it on paper with you guys and arguing about fret numbers. All right, and speaking of books, in case you're interested, my Fracture book, I'm supposed to meet on Wednesday with the book designer to go over the final touches on the first draft. So we were hoping to have it out this year, but COVID also disrupted my designer's schedule and everything. But just so everyone knows, every single page is uniquely designed. It's over 300 pages. It's like a magazine layout. It's really going to be incredible. And I actually was looking through it today, and I almost started tearing up because I forgot how beautiful this book is. So wait till you see it. We're also doing super high quality printing on it. The book will probably weigh over 3 pounds just on its own. It's over 300 pages, full color, 70-pound paper, hardcover. It's going to be amazing. So I'm hoping that in January I will have some pre-order details for people. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone. Thanks to the 100 and some people who joined us on chat today. And just so everyone knows, this URL will be permanent. So if you want to share the video afterward, when it's available, when YouTube processes it, you can share this URL with your friends and get them to order the book as well. All right, let's close on another track from Trey. And let's do Shotgun Wedding. I remember that one being really interesting. All right, see ya, everyone.
thank you.